Hello everyone, welcome to Decoding Matrix. Today we will see the UPSC prelims paper which I solved on 16 June 2024, and according to various coaching answer keys I was scoring around 110. So let us see how I attempted this paper in the actual exam. So we will make this video kind of 3 or 4 parts discussing 25 to 30 questions each, and this is the first part, and the paper which I am showing to you is the actual paper which I have solved in the exam. As you can see, it is a bit soiled and folded, sorry for that. So let us see the first question. By the way, this is the set B. The first question, as it says, the total fertility rate in an economy is defined as. The first option is number of children born per 1000 people in a population in a year. That is more or less the definition of crude birth rate, if I am not wrong. So that is not the answer. Similarly, the option number B, the number of children born to a couple in their lifetime. This actually doesn't make any sense with respect to the actual question, total fertility rate. It the word itself implies it is something of a more of a macro picture with respect to country or something. So let us see the third option, the birth rate minus the death rate. The birth rate minus the death rate will more or less be this is the total number of population increase, so that cannot be the total fertility rate. So we are left actually with the last option, the average number of live births a woman would have by the end of her childbearing age. Plus, if you can see the word marker over here, the total fertility rate, fertility, it must be related to something women and such terms like that. This question is more or less covered in the basic topics in the NCERTs of human geography or economy. So you need to be thorough with these concepts rather than just going after the current affairs. Second question we will see is related to NBFCs. In India, NBFCs can access the liquidity adjustment facility window of RBI. The second statement, in India, foreign institutional investors can hold the government securities. As you can see, I have circled the word can over here. And thirdly, in India, stock exchanges can offer separate trading platform for debts. So though I may not necessarily know each and every fact, but in the exam, since you have to take a good amount of risk, and I have attempted around 93 questions in this exam for this particular paper, so at such times you need to think about whether this is a possibility and whether such thing can happen. So NBFCs, yes, they can access the liquidity adjustment facility of the RBI. I didn't know for sure during the paper. In India, FIIs hold the government securities. Yes, they can. And thirdly, in India, stock exchanges can offer separate trading platform for debt. So in the exam, I actually went with all three options, and according to most of the answer keys, this is the correct answer. So the major differentiating factor here is, even during such questions, you have to attempt such questions taking cues like can indicates more or less a possibility, and it is not a very radical concept which they are asking for, like NBFCs can access liquidity adjustment facility, so maybe they can, but yes, according to some answer keys they cannot. So we'll have to really wait for UPSC to reveal what is the actual answer key. Then the next question is, in India, which of the following can trade corporate bonds and government securities? Again, as you can see, I have circled over here, can trade corporate bonds and government securities. The first option is insurance companies, pension funds, and then retail investors. Again, I have went with the liberal logic. Insurance companies, or I mean more or less all of them, can invest in corporate bonds and government securities. This I had read in one of the resources which I refer to for economy, that is Mrunal's magazine. So it has been more or less covered in it. And also, again, even if you might not have read it and you have to attempt it in the exam, so like government securities, insurance companies, yes, surely they can invest in it. Pension funds and retail investors, corporate bonds, they can also invest in corporate bonds as well. It is not like they are asking in some cryptocurrency, like can these particular companies invest in cryptocurrencies or something. Then it would have been, we might have had to think, but then as long as it is not a very difficult thing to allow these companies to do. It is fine. So I went to this option D, 1 2 3. So let us see the next. Consider the following. Which of the above are considered as financial instruments? The first option is exchange traded funds, motor vehicles, and currency swap. So as you can see, I had taken out the second option, motor vehicles, because the definition itself implies financial instruments, that is, which have a monetary value and which are more or less exchanged in terms of the finance, like money or something, and not actually an asset per se. This I really don't know where this, like, I haven't read this in NCERT or something, but again, whatever economy sources I have referred, and according to my understanding, the motor vehicles was surely wasn't there in the answer. So I crossed out the two options, as you can see, B and C, and the only two options remaining were 1 and D. So 1 and 3. So the exchange traded funds were by default going to be there in the answer, and currency swap, so it was more of a leap of faith during the exam. You really doubt for, like, whether it would be there or not, but then you have to go with such questions. You might not be sure that it is there in the included or excluded in the financial instruments, but then you have to take a leap of faith because you have already eliminated two options, and then you must surely attempt such questions. So I went with the currency swap, and also was thinking about it. Currency swap is also related to something more of financial concept, that is, the Sri Lanka and India, I think, had a currency swap during their financial crisis. So that was a financial instrument, as we can refer to it. So it wasn't some asset per se, so it was okay. So we will go with option D. The fifth question, as you can see over here, is with sectors of Indian economy. So this is actually a very basic concept they have asked over here. I was also kind of surprised to see this particular question in the examination, and this is apparently from the ninth standard NCERT of economics. And another question over here, as you can look, this seventh question and this fifth question, they both are from the ninth standard NCERT. So you have to actually read the NCERT thoroughly. I think it is in the ninth standard first chapter itself. There is some story of village Palampur. I can't really recall at this moment. There is this basic story, and in this same chapter or in the next chapter itself, they have given the definition of what constitutes primary, secondary sector, or what is working capital, fixed capital. So you need to really have the conceptual clarity. You really never know which source UPSC going to refer next. And as you can see, conceptual clarity and the basics doing the NCERTs will really fetch you more marks than just running after current affairs of various magazines. As you can see, these are very conceptual questions which are covered in more of majorly all the NCERTs. So let us see over here, storage of agricultural produce is secondary. No, because secondary sector implies, it means something manufacturing or production related. So just storage will not imply secondary. We'll cut that option. Dairy farming, sure, that is primary procurement from milch animals, so that is primary. Mineral exploration, again, that is not tertiary. Tertiary is more or less service related. It must be primary or secondary. As you can see, I had marked over here, and it is primary as far as I can recollect. And then weaving cloth is secondary because we are adding value to the already procured cotton cloth. So if it was related to just cotton cultivation or cotton plucking, then it would have been primary, but then we have added value to it, so it's weaving cloth is cotton, it's secondary occupation. So how many pair are correctly matched? It's only two. Next question, which of the above can be used as a feedstock for producing sustainable aviation fuel? So the options, when we look at the options, I think I might have got this question wrong, because the options were agricultural residues, I was okay with it. Waste water treatment sludge, okay. Wood mill waste, okay. So I got a bit confused in the exam about producing sustainable aviation fuel. I focused too much on this word sustainable aviation fuel, and I noted in the options that wood mill waste, waste water technology, and agricultural residue, which is also more or less used or processed from the waste. And this thing was corn grain, so it is not a waste product per se. It can be used for uh, for consumption purposes. So I was a bit confused whether it would be all the all the products, all the four options, or all the three options except the corn grain. And I went with option D. And mostly according to a lot of the answer keys, this is wrong. But let us see. We will have to see for what UPSC will give the answer. But again, the thumb rule would rather be if you are really confused with respect to such questions where you can't definitely say whether it is right or wrong. It's just better to go with all the options in such cases. Like it would have been much better if I had went with the option 1 2 3 4 all, because across the set of 100 questions, such approach of going with all of the questions where you can't definitely rule out a particular possibility will eventually give you the maximum amount of marks. And that is our actual aim, to gain maximum amount of marks and not just think about each question in very depth. Like you can't really prove, how can you go and prove that corn grain is not being used as a sustainable aviation fuel? So I think this is the question which I have got wrong, and I will show you where other questions where you just having that assumption where you can't really prove something to be wrong really helps in the longer run. So the next question, as I said, this is from the NCERT. It is the basic conceptual questions. This can be answered from the economics NCERT of the ninth standard. So the question here, it refers to what is physical capital in Indian economy. Farmers plow, they have referred to it as the working capital, which is not correct, because we need to know what is the difference between fixed and working capital. As you know, the fixed capital is basically which can be used again and again, like the land or the plot which you have brought. And working capital is more or less once you use it you cannot really again use it again. That is like petrol or something of that sorts. So the first option, farmers plow, is not working capital. It is more of a fixed capital. Sorry, it is not the working capital. As yes, okay, it is not the, I am really sorry about that. It is not the working capital, it is a fixed capital. So because it can be used again. Second option, the computer is a fixed capital because it can be used again. So first statement is wrong, the second statement is right. Yarn used by the weaver, it is not a fixed capital, because obviously you cannot use the yarn once it has been made into a shirt or something of that sort. So this option is incorrect. Petrol is a working capital because yes, once working capital has been used it cannot be used again. Petrol is right. So how many pairs are matched correctly? Only two. Eighth question, which one of the following words phrases is most appropriately used to denote an interoperable network? It's actually a long question. Basically it refers to 3D virtual world that can be accessed by millions of users who can exert property rights over them. So big data analytics, no, because it is just data processing or something of the sorts. Cryptography, it is again related to digital token currency, no. I was a bit confused in the exam with respect to metaverse and virtual metrics. As you can see, I had ruled the about options and these two options were remaining with me. So another thing which I think about in the exam is what topic has been trending a lot, what has been there in the newspapers a lot. So metaverse was obviously in the news a lot, and these things does imply, the question implies talking about metaverse, because it is a 3D virtual world which can be used simultaneously by millions of users. And there were reports of people, I think, conducting marriages or something in the metaverse and a lot. So I went with the metaverse and it is correct. I got it correct. The ninth question refers to the rules imposed by the RBI while trading foreign banks, and consider the following. I the first option here is there is no minimum capital requirement for wholly owned banking subsidiaries in India. That is incorrect, because even if you don't know this particular statement by knowledge, think about it. Why would there would be a no minimum capital requirement for wholly owned banking subsidiaries in India? There should be some, otherwise any foreign bank would start even if it has small amount of presence. There should be some credibility to the company with respect to the capital and the assets it has. So this is surely bound to be incorrect. As you can see, it is not just about that. Since there is the word no mentioned, I am ruling it out. There's a rationale behind why I am ruling the particular statement out. So you need to follow that rationale. Secondly, for wholly owned banking subsidiaries in India, at least 50% of the board members should be Indian nationals. And I was really confused with respect to the statements. I had read it that yes, at least 50% of the board members should be Indian nationals, and I had even ticked this option, but it does happen in the exam. As you can see, uh, I was going to mark the option B in the exam, but then at the last moment, I don't know what happened. I just developed jitters and I marked option D as in the, and I got the statement wrong. This was actually a right statement. It at least 50% of the board members should be Indian national. At least is, I would say, a very, it is not a very extreme word, so the chances of getting it wrong were less. And apart from it, again the logic was fine that yes, because if there are foreign banks, there should be Indian nationals. Otherwise, there would be issues with respect to the capital or the bank being used for vested interest of foreign nationals or something of the sort. But this is what I want to show, that even though you might have information during the exam, the temperament can go wrong at times. And I was really confused because I had read this somewhere in my notes with respect to economy, but then I at the last moment I was not very sure. And at such times you can, such question can affect your other questions. So it is very important, not just the knowledge part or reading the NCRTs and getting the basic questions right. You have to maintain this particular attitude that it is not over until it is over. So you have to treat each and every question like it is, and it is easier said than done, but such things are to be practiced during the mock paper examinations. So let's move ahead. Then this next question with respect to CSR in India, the following statement: CSR rules specify that expenditures that benefit the company directly or its employee will not be considered as CSR. Fair enough, because if it is benefiting the own company, it would be similar to greenwashing or some kind of concept like that, that it is not actually helping the environment or society. And CSR rules do not specify minimum spending on CSR activities. Again, no. Why would they not specify minimum spending? Then probably someone would be spending just 0.1% of their profits, net annual profits on CSR, and then they would be calling themselves a company which is compliant with CSR rules. So no. Again, though this word is not, the word is mentioned not a negative word, but then again you have to not just follow these words blindly. You have to know why you have to rule them out. And as you can see, I had written 2.5% here. I had the knowledge of this question also, and this is more or less a common kind of thing which you come across if you have been thorough with your static and the contemporary questions which have been coming in the UPSC exam. So the next question was radioisotope thermoelectric generators. Consider the following statements: RTGs are miniature fusion reactors. RTGs are used for powering on-board system of spacecraft. RTGs can use plutonium 238, which is a byproduct of weapons development. And as you can see, I had to mark at least two options right, because the minimum two options had to be there. So I went with all of the options because of the logic that I thought if plutonium 238 can be used as a byproduct of weapons development, it can maybe used as fission reactors. But then I was wrong. They cannot be used as fission reactors. RTGs are used for powering onboard spacecraft, and plutonium can be used, but surprisingly they are not fission reactors. I hadn't read this current affairs, so it's fine, as it's not with respect to a particular question. You just need to clear the exam. You just need to go beyond the cutoff. Even though if you might get such questions wrong, others might have got it right because on the basis of knowledge, but it's fine. And I cannot really waste a lot of time thinking on such question during the exam, whether it would be a fission reactor or fusion reactor or whatever of the sorts. I have to go with this common understanding and logic. Yes, yeah, that might be possible. If it's plutonium, it might be fission reactor, but yes, it can really go wrong at times. Then the last, then this 12th question on this page is: giant stars live much longer than short dwarfs, and the giant stars live much longer than dwarf stars. This is the first statement. Second statement is compared to dwarf stars, giant stars have a greater rate of nuclear reactions. So actually these kind of questions are much easier to handle, because as you can see, if you know one statement to be completely wrong, or if you're assured about it, then you can get this question right very easily. Giant stars live much longer than dwarf stars. No, they live for shorter duration, as I have written over here. And compared to dwarf stars, giant stars have a greater rate of nuclear reactions. Yes, they have a greater rate of nuclear reaction, and if you can follow this logic further, if they have greater rate of nuclear reactions, their core will completely burn down and utilize their nuclear energy through fusion, and then eventually its gravity will pull itself. So either it will become more of like a black hole or a neutron star of that kind. So compared to dwarf stars, giant stars will have greater rate of nuclear reactions, and they will not actually live longer. They'll live for a shorter duration because they will tend to utilize their energy quickly. So I went with statement 1 is incorrect, statement 2 is correct, and that was the right answer. So the next question, which is 13th question, which was one of the following, is human body that dilates blood vessels and increases blood flow. This question: nitric oxide, nitrous oxide, nitrogen dioxide, nitrogen pentoxide. Surprisingly, I had more of an idea that it was, yes, it surely was a nitrous oxide and nitrogen dioxide, because nitrogen dioxide and nitrous oxide, this goes more or less into the area of either they are pollutants or greenhouse gases or ozone depleting substances, into that realm. So that is certainly not something which human body will use for dilation of blood vessels. So these two options were certainly gone. Then it was left with nitrogen pentoxide and nitric oxide. Again, I was more or less certain here about nitric oxide because I had read it somewhere in random article. But then again, if you even haven't read about it, you can surely cross out these two particular options, B and C, if you have read your environment static in a good manner. Then the remaining options are nitric oxide and nitrogen pentaoxide. And if you are really not sure, you should still attempt such questions, because in the long term, statistically, mathematically, you will be getting 50% of them correct if you are able to rule out the two wrong statements accurately. Then eventually down the line, because you will be getting more marks, and you cannot leave such questions if you are sure about removing B and C, because the, as you know, the negative marking is 2/3, and even if you get such questions wrong, even if you get maybe such two questions wrong and one question right, of where you have removed two options and you have left with two options, and you get such two questions wrong and one question right, you will still be net positive. So the next question is identification of, consider the following activities. It is with respect to radar, when what ways radar can be used. So consider the following activities: identification of narcotics on, and the in how many of the above activities can radars be used. So again, as I had said, you have to, when you're not really sure, this question can be completely ruled out. That yes, you like in the exam I just ruled out this first particular statement, identification of narcotics on passengers at airport. You really don't know whether radars can be used for this purpose. See, these are very broad applications of this technology, and you can't really pinpoint whether this can be used or not. Then again, UPSC may give it the answer as only two or maybe all three. But then, as I'm saying, as you can see across the paper, as the paper progresses, going for such all three as answer in such questions is much better, because ultimately you have to attempt such questions, because you can't just come out attempting 82 questions. Then it becomes a game of accuracy, and as the questions are being prepared nowadays, it is a bit difficult to just clear the exam with accuracy. So you have to make the guesswork. So if you have to make the guesswork, you need to have some strategy that you can be using homogeneously across the paper. So this is one of the things which has worked for me across 3 years of my prelims, and that has been successfully, that has helped me to clear all three of them from 22, 23 and 24. I'll also be discussing those papers in this coming weeks. and I'll try to get the actual paper which I solved in those particular exams, so that you will know how I where I faltered and where I was able to successfully implement those particular question and answers. So in this question again we should have gone with all three options, but yes, in the exam this thing can happen. You might overthink a bit, and I thought that maybe identification narcotics would not be possible with the help of radar, and so I just went with two options: monitoring of precipitation and tracking migration of animal. But I think the answer must be all three. How many of the above are considered fifth generation aircraft fighters? Then, as you can see now, some people may think that okay, for should we also go for all three over here in these questions? No, there's a difference. This is a very definite question, because fifth generation aircraft, fourth generation aircraft, these are such technologies which are defined. It is not something that which is subject to the interpretation of the examiner or anyone else, because uh, it is a very definite technology. So I had thought that might Rafael might be a fifth generation aircraft, but it is apparently not, and the answer here is none. The next question was, in which of the following are hydrogels used? So as you can see in the last question, even though I have got it wrong, it is fine. It might have been in the current affairs. I am not actually a very proponent of current affairs. I would rather spend a lot of time reading the NCRTs from even maybe from 6th standard to 12th standard, especially for geography, economy, because I have seen questions coming out from those NCRTs. Economy, I think the NCRTs are from 9th standard, and the other NCRTs, the themed NCRTs of history, there are certain questions which are being asked from these NCRTs, and so you really need to stick to them, because current affairs, again, there's this difference. Current affairs, suppose there might be 1 lakh events, which this is just a hypothetical figure, I'm just telling you that the pool of current affairs is much larger than the pool of your NCRTs. NCRTs are more or less defined, so you need to really get these basics first right through the NCRTs, because UPSC is surely going to ask questions from NCRTs as well as PYQs. But suppose current affairs, you might have read a lot about defense current affairs, but you might have missed this particular fact that there are fifth generation aircraft fighters, or any other fact which was in the current affairs. So it is really difficult to cover all the current affairs, and you really don't know which type of current affairs UPSC is going to be asking. As seen in this paper, UPSC suddenly asked some defense oriented current affairs. Last some few years back it had asked sports oriented current affairs. So you really don't know on what kind of current affairs you should be focusing upon. So it is much better to use your limited amount of time on reading NCRTs and PYQs, and rather do PYQs of CDS and CAPF and NDA. There are certain questions which have been repeated from the options of those particular examinations. So I would rather suggest you to invest in those particular areas. And now let us move to our next question. In which of the following are hydrogels used? Controlled drug delivery in patient, mobile air conditioning, preparing of industrial lubricants. I just went with all three. I don't even know what hydrogels are, but yes, according to majority of the coaching answer keys, this is right. This is what I'm talking about. See, even if I might have got a couple of questions wrong, but then I just went with all three, because then again I really don't know what hydrogels are, and if which of the following are hydrogels used. So this is I don't even think I had read some current affairs, but it wasn't covered it in it. So the point is, either you get to solve most of the questions through NCRTs and PYQs and your knowledge solving skills, rather than just reading a lot about what is happening in this context. The next question, which of the following is exhaust pipe emissions from fuel cell electric vehicles powered by hydrogen? It was a very basic question. It is water vapor, because it is basically asking fuel cell electric vehicles. Oxygen, surely they won't emit oxygen. Hydronium, no. Hydrogen peroxide, no. Water vapor, as you might have observed it, the Delhi buses or any other electric buses, they usually they have dripping water from their tailpipe, and it is water vapor and heat or something like that. Recently, the term pumped storage hydropower is actually and appropriately discussed in the context of the following. The pumped storage hydropower. I have got this question wrong, and these 18th and 19th question I had left for the last 5 to 10 minutes, and apparently got both of them wrong. So let us see what I got wrong and what could have been done. The pumped storage hydropower, so it is something which is being stored maybe during the times when it can be used at later for when the particular resource might not be available, and it is pumped storage hydropower. So I really thought it would be relating to something agriculture of terrace crop field or something like that, so I just went with option A, but it wasn't option A, it was option C if I'm not wrong. Long duration energy storage. So it is fine if you get such questions wrong, because again it was not covered in any current affairs or something like that, and I don't think it is even in NCRTs. These are just random logical based questions. You, if you have some logic to solve them, you can get them right. Yeah, it does make sense. Just like I had connected the word fertility with women related the birth ratio question or something like that, the first question. Here you can see hydropower, pumped storage hydropower. So hydropower is actually related to the energy storage, but again this is what the post facto analysis, this is the analysis which I am doing right now, sitting in my room in 2025 on March 23rd, and this is not about something I could think immediately at the moment on June 16th 2024. It is fine, you might get such questions wrong at days, you might get such questions right, but you need to try to follow the logic and understand it at least as of now. So if such pattern repeats again in 2025, so you can get those questions right. The next question is membrane bioreactors. The are often discussed in the context of. I was sure that it is not the first answer, assisted reproductive technologies, because I have read about it. Assisted reproductive technologies is the, it is basically not the word related to it, and you can also see the membrane. Okay, it is related to something living cells or something like that, and bioreactor, so it might be generating something, or there might be a reaction to something of that sorts if you use the word association. And assisted reproductive technologies, there is no bioreaction or something. Then again, vaccine production technologies, we have read a lot of vaccine production technologies like mRNA vaccine, and there were a lot of inactivated vaccine, and so it was not surely membrane bioreactors. So it was a confusion between the D, wastewater treatment technology, and the drug delivery nanotechnologies. So I went with option B, but then apparently I got this also wrong. Drug delivery nanotechnologies, it doesn't have a relation to membrane bioreactors, it is wastewater treatment technology. So it is fine. As you can see again, there is word causal relation, that it is, since it is a bioreactor, it might be treating the wastewater, but really I am just not going to fake that. Yes, I wasn't able to think about this thing, this logical correction in the exam, so it's okay, I got even this question wrong. Then, with reference to the Indian economy, collateral borrowing and lending obligations are instruments of. So it is actually a common question if you know the answer, money market. But then again, if you want the logic behind how the question has been framed with reference to Indian economy, collateral borrowing, collateral is something we, that is we give to the bank or during times of mortgage, or that is while asking for some loan they ask for some collateral, so that is the collateral they are talking about. If you can make the word linkage, it is money market. Collateral borrowing and lending, so you can see these words are related to banking, and banking is covered in the money market with respect to the, say, the treasury bills or the whatever the deposits. It is for less than 1 year. So it, stock market is not collateral borrowing or lending or something. Forex is not collateral borrowing or lending. And bond market, again, it is debt and it is not related to collateral borrowing and lending. So if you know the like the banking operations are covered in the money market, you can deduce it from over here. The next question was from current affairs, which of the above projects have been constructed as greenfield airport, but as far as I can recollect, it wasn't covered in any of those traditional current affairs magazine. It might have been current affairs, but then it wasn't covered in the traditional sources which everyone refers to. So the three options were Donio, Polo Airport, Kushinagar, and Vijayawada. And I had no clue about what to attempt about this question, so I just skipped the question as you can see over here, and the answer was Donio, Polo, and Kushinagar Airport. It's fine because you might not have idea about all of these questions. The next question was with respect to water vapor, which of the following statements are right? It is a gas, the amount of which decreases with altitude. This question is covered in the NCRT, the physical NCRT. Yes, it is a gas, the amount of which decreases with altitude. Yes, because as you can know, there are trees or there are various agents which, as a result of which evapotranspiration, it would be captured in the troposphere, and it would, as we go higher into the earth, higher into the atmosphere, its quantity will reduce. Secondly, its percentage is maximum at the poles. No, it would be higher where there is higher evaporation and more rainfall and there are more trees, so which is the tropical area or the equatorial area. So it's not at the poles, and this is covered in the NCRT. So this is the basic stuff. So the answer is A. Consider the following statements. The annual and daily range of temperature is as low. That is the first question. And the second and the first statement is annual and daily range of temperatures is low. Okay, so basically there is not much diurnal or annual temperature changes. Precipitation occurs throughout the year. Okay, precipitation varies between 50 and 250 centimeter. What type of climate? So you can, let's see what can be ruled out. Equatorial can be ruled out because the precipitation varies throughout between 50 to 250 centimeter. In equatorial it is constant throughout the year, that is fine, but it doesn't vary this much, so we can rule this out. Secondly, humid subtropical can also be ruled out because then in humid subtropical the annual and the daily range of temperatures won't be that low, and besides the precipitation won't be occurring throughout the year. These are not the characteristics of humid subtropical. These are mentioned in the NCRT, and I think it must be mentioned in the Köppen's classification, the physical geography NCRT. So I was confused between B and D, and I got this question wrong. The answer was the marine west coast climate. The answer is D. The Even I thought the China type had more or less similar characteristics, but apparently it is not the answer. That's fine. The next question was with respect to the Coriolis force, which of the statements are correct? The first statement is it increases with increase in wind velocity. That is not, I think, okay. That is correct according to various answer keys, and but this is actually a disputed question. Let us see what UPSC tells us. The next question, it is maximum at the poles and it is absent at the equator. That is true. Coriolis force is maximum at the poles and absent at the equator. It is given in NCRT. And it increases with wind velocity. I think it is also mentioned in NCRT. So I must have got this question wrong. And the answer is both of these question. Though both of these statements are right. That is okay. This you might get such questions wrong, but yes, I should have read the NCRT better with respect to these questions, and that is something which we can learn. The next question, on 21st June every year, which of the following latitude experiences a sunlight of more than 12 hours? So it is basically asking about the summer solstice, that is June 21st. So there will be more than 12 hours of sunlight on the on the area beyond Tropic of Cancer, that is from Tropic of Cancer onwards. because on June 21st the sunlight will be maximum on Tropic of Cancer. So the area beyond Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Cancer will receive more amount of sunlight. The Tropic of Cancer and the Arctic Circle. The Arctic Circle will also receive around, I think there would be 24 hours of sunlight, if I am not wrong, during the summer solstice in the Arctic Circle, because the sun will never set over there. So the Tropic of Capricorn and the equator can be removed. This again, this is also PYQ, which was the June 20 summer solstice PYQ was asked a few years back, and it is also a very basic concept which can be covered from the NCRT. So the answer was 2 and 4 D. And the question 26, one of the following regions has world largest tropical peatland, has controls global carbon emissions, etc., etc., and it has its possible destruction can bring detrimental effect. So as you can see, it was a bit confusing question here. I got it wrong, and though it has the conventional tricks or the method which you use to eliminate options, a few of them, like couple of them, were getting applied in the same question, so I got a bit confused. So I thought it is a tropical peatland of this such size must be Amazon basin in Brazil. But then the UPSC has been asking a lot of stuff about Congo and the African things, African peninsula. So I thought it can also be the answer. And then there is also other problem of the Kikori basin and Rio de Plata basin. I don't know where these basins are located, but then you tend to think that the examiner might not have uh, used this option if it was not for the answer. And so it was actually a tough question where kind of all the logics were getting applied. So I got this wrong. The answer is Congo basin. That is fine, because again this was not covered in any traditional current affairs and you have to take some risk. But okay, if I mean this question could have been avoided and not attempted, because kind of two or three logics were getting applied. So as you can see, I might not have got a lot of questions right by now, and I had also realized this in the exam while attempting the paper. But then that itself is a challenge, from going from over here to crossing the 100 mark and going until 110 marks. That requires not just knowledge, you have to have patience. You can't just panic and get all frightened because you're not getting all the questions from the conventional sources. So you just have to wait for the right questions to come. You just have to wait for your polity section or maybe some other economy section questions. So that is what the mindset constitutes. So let's see how many questions I got right over here. By now, one, two, this question I also got right, three, four, okay, five, six, eight, okay, I had got this wrong, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, around 15 questions I have got right till now out of 26 questions, and I think I have left one question, so I have got around 15 right and 10 wrong as of now. That is fine. That is not a very great ratio. By like you have completed one fourth of your innings batting and you haven't scored really a lot, but that is fine. That is how I want to tell you how I maintained that mindset throughout the exam, so as to gain the advantage in the later half. And I'll also share with you how I attempt the paper. I usually attempt the paper in one go. I keep just few 5 to 10 questions for the last 5 to 10 minutes, and I attempt all the I attempt basically all the 100 questions in one go, and I just keep the 5 to 10 questions for the last few minutes. And this usually saves me a good amount of time. And I have certain techniques which I use. For example, if I know for a particular fact that it is true, then I would just mark it over there, and I would mark it after completing all the 5 to 6 questions on a particular page and then mark it in the OMR there and there itself. Because at times it does happen that if you try to mark a lot of questions in the OMR, so like say like a set of 20-30 questions, you might just mismark some or the other questions, and might just ruin your whole the attempt itself. So you can't just take risk, and it is better to take a few seconds of rest while marking the OMR, so you just get recharged to move on to the next page again. And also while attempting these questions, you need to be really focused, because small mistakes can really cost you some easy questions. And reading the NCRTs, as you can see, is very much important rather than just going after current affairs. Reading the NCRTs, PYQs, and giving such mocks in real time, will really help you to tackle these questions. And I'll solve the remaining questions in the next part of the video, and I'll also let you know how I approach the remaining questions. So thank you for watching. See you again.